Hey guys, it's Tyson here. Today's show, we're going to talk about simplicity, but before we get into it, I just wanted to rewind the clock a couple of years ago to where this conversation, or the idea of even having a conversation like this, was born. I graduated from uni and I started working, and I was working as a teacher for a couple of years, and what I found getting involved in the teaching industry, or getting involved in the full-time work industry, was that there was a phrase that was thrown around so often by so many people whenever we sat down in the staff room, and that was, I would ask, how you going? And the answer would always come back, oh, just so busy, I've got so much on, can't wait for the weekend, can't wait for the holidays. And what I think a lot of the time was just small talk. I think at other times was also a little glimpse into the life of the person that I was speaking to, and I'd always walked away this feeling of, man, like it's so sad that we spend so much of our time at work and we hang out for this little snippet of free time on the weekend to be able to actually do the things we love. I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't know what it was called, but I started to try and make a few changes in my own life, which would allow me to spend more time doing the things I actually loved with the people I loved, rather than just hanging out for the weekends to do those things. Today on the show, I want to talk with Matt Powell about simplicity. The idea here is to be able to leave you with some tools and techniques to be able to help create space in your life for the things that you really love, not just the things that you've had on your calendar. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in the speed of life because we all do it, and often it's what's accepted and considered normal. So it's hard to break free sometimes. So, hey, if you're in that category, I'm so glad you're here. I really hope you find some of these strategies really helpful, and you feel as though you got a little bit of space in your life for the things you really love, a little bit of space to breathe. So guys, with that said, sit back, relax, enjoy.
I'm the soul challenger, I'm the road damager. Now behold the cold and the straight magical. Cause the sky brings fires and the strong grow weary. The heroes spill blood in a blast and a fury. Pray on the power and pray to your father. Cause all of the quakes in the universe resonate to your heartbeat and your faith.
Good to have you back. I've blown out the candle that Jesse left on because it felt a little bit inappropriate for us to have a candle in the middle
sorry
of the table.
to interrupt there, mate. You walked in at bad timing. Sorry, bro.
Oh, you didn't at all. Jesse was cleaning the kitchen and I was looking at Instagram. It's been a week though since we've caught up. I've been to Ireland. I've been chilling over there, travelling around.
Yeah, you told me all about it, but yeah, it was nice.
Sick, bro. It's good, but it's good to be back.
Good to get away, for sure.
I missed you for a week.
Man, I've been counting down the minutes.
Oh, stop it. Simplicity is the topic that we wanted to talk about today. And you've been dreaming up some great talking points over the last couple of days. So I thought, as a bit of a start point, I thought it could be a cool conversation because of the fact that if you're anything like me, I reckon there's so many conversations that you get into. You chat with someone, say, "Man, how are you?" Yeah, I'm just so busy. Busy, just flat out, hanging out for the weekend, looking forward to the next time they can get a break, just to be able to do something that they really enjoy. And I thought, man, it wasn't that long ago when I felt really overwhelmed by just the busy schedule that we're all a part of and hanging out to be able to do some of the things that I'm actually passionate about. So I thought it could be cool just to sit down, have a chat for an hour or so, just about a few of the tools, techniques, strategies, whatever, the advice that can help simplify our life, that can help us create space for the things that we really love.
Totally.
So we talked about this a few days ago and thought we'd bring in a few notes that we both found really helpful.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we'd just throw a couple out there. Talk to me about some of your favourites. I'll do the same back to you.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone listening can get a little bit of help from it.
Here we go. We're going to give it a shout out before we get into simplicity.
Yes.
So we've got a couple of nice comments this week from we now have more than 3 fans, maybe. All right, shout out to Jesse in Canada. Cheers, bro, sending you love.
Oh, man.
Heather in America, sending you love. Mm-hmm. And Megan in Chicago. She has really pretty eyes. So,
really?
Megan, if you're listening, shout out to you as well.
Oh, Megan, well done.
Yeah, anyway.
Well done. No, good, Powley.
No,
really
good.
Cool, man. Really cool. No, big shout out to you guys. Big hug there from London here.
Yeah.
But, bro, I was wondering if you could kick us off.
Sure, mate. Okay, well, I was thinking about this. It was really cool that we've discussed, now we're having sort of an idea we've got 3 or 4 days to think about the topic. And so we can get into some practical ideas later on in the podcast. But I kind of want to go a little bit deeper and sort of maybe look at a little bit of theory, if you can call it that.
Yeah, bro.
So just start it off. It all starts with the mind. And simple mind, simple life, simple everything else. How can you live simply? Or have this idea of simplicity if your mind is just racing at 100 miles an hour. So I think for me, it just all starts with this theory of trying to quieten and calm and simplify your mind and your thoughts, right? So, and like I said, we can get into practical tips and turning off your phone and, going for a run and exercising or cleaning out the fridge, but it doesn't really matter if your mind is like all over the shop. So I think that's like first and foremost the most important. And, I suppose that some people call that like mindfulness, and this, we've talked about that as well before. And there's this huge kind of thing and movement and mindfulness and blogs and podcasts and, you listen to like a Tim Ferriss or whoever it might be. And it's kind of like, oh, you got to meditate in the morning for 20 minutes and all sort of stuff. And I know even you are a big fan of that, and it's great. And someone like Tim Ferriss comes along and says, oh, everyone who I know is a millionaire or an actor meditates. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to meditate. But like, why? Why should you even bother?
That's a great question.
Seriously. You know what I mean? There's all these books on mindfulness, but why? Why bother? But for me, man, and I want to start off with a parable. So it's the parable of the monk and the warlord, all right, or the samurai, whatever you want to call it. And anyway, so there's this crazy warlord, and he just kind of strikes fear into the heart of everyone, and he's running around through Japan or Asia or whatever you want to call it, and roaming from town to town and killing people and conquering territory and all that sort of stuff. And he gets to this one town, and everyone sort of flees from the town except for him and his army, and you know what I mean. And everyone except for this one monk. Okay, all the other monks scatter off into the hills, and this warlord hears about this one monk who has refused to leave, and he's like furious, right? So he goes in and he storms into this temple and confronts this monk, this little old chilled out monk, right? And so he goes to the monk and he goes, all right, I want you to teach me the difference between heaven and hell. And the monk looks at him with like a bit of disgust and says, why should I teach you the meaning of heaven and hell? You're a big oaf, you're disgusting, get out of my sight. And so the warlord pulls out his sword, raises it above his shoulders, his head, and as he's about to come down and kill the monk pauses and goes, that is hell. And the dude stops for a second, the warlord stops, thinks about it, drops his sword, and starts crying. And then the monk goes, and that is heaven. And the whole point of the story is that heaven and hell are not these imaginary places, before or after death, or under the ground, or on the skies. They're actually states of mind. And so if you live through anger and jealousy and frustration and anxiety and rage and all those negative things, you're living in hell, all right? And this is the metaphor of the Garden of Eden as well, or the kingdom of heaven. And when you live in heaven here on earth, it's actually accessible to anyone at any time. And that is the state of love and joy and kindness and friendship and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So calming back and tying that in, simplicity is living in the kingdom of heaven all the time.
Dude.
See you, bro.
Oh, see you later.
See you, bro.
Good episode.
See you, bro.
Good episode.
See you, bro.
Man. Okay. I feel like I got to think about that for 4 days before I can respond.
Do you like it?
Oh man, that's amazing. It's really amazing. So it's just
this whole idea of mindfulness. And in 2017, and I said it's like kind of this new movement or whatever. It's not a new movement, right? And for me, the father of mindfulness is the Buddha. Can I maybe just give like a spiel about the Buddha?
Man,
for
please.
For a few minutes.
Please,
Sorry,
man.
I don't want to like talk too much.
Talk too much. I want you to.
Just maybe for like a few listeners who don't know much about him. All right, so the Buddha was actually a person on Earth, born on Earth. Okay, he's not like a deity or a myth or anything like that. And there's pretty good scientific evidence to prove that. And essentially, he was born the prince or the son of a nobleman around India. India didn't exist back then, but in the Himalayas, 2,500 years ago. And anyway, when he was born, it was prophesied, this sort of like wandering monk came up to his father, who was like this king or this nobleman, and said, your son's either going to become a great emperor or an amazing holy man. Okay, and the father wanted his son to become a great emperor. Okay, so he gave him a life of luxury, like everything you could want, but it was in the confines of the palace and the walls. Okay, and food and servants and luxury and anything he wanted, and friends and joy and comfort. And it lasted for 29 years. And as you do, you get a little bit restless, and as you're a young man, it's like, okay, what's outside the walls? So he decides to take an excursion outside the wall one day with his guard or whoever it is. And as he's outside the walls for the first time, he sees a really old man. And he's shocked because he's never seen any suffering inside the palace, or an old person. And this old man's like hobbling across the road, bent over and all this sort of stuff. And he's like, whoa, like what's going on there? His guard sort of says, oh, that's an old guy. He's going to die soon. He's like, whoa. Anyway, so he ends up going back home to the palace, and whatever the time frame is, maybe over 6 months or something, he ends up going back out again and again a couple more times. And he also sees on the other journeys, he sees a really sick and homeless man, okay, like in the streets, begging, dying, frail as well. And he sees this person suffering, okay, in the gutter. And he's sort of really taken back by this. And on the other occasion, he sees a procession of mourners carrying a body down to the guards for like cremation. And he's like, holy shit, like there's a dead body, right? Like, and he comes to the realization that life is kind of suffering, no matter who we are, human beings, we're all united by either age or sickness and death. This is like unavoidable. And he comes to this realization. Anyway, so it's what's called the Great Going Forth. He decides he wants to leave the castle. Sorry, on the fourth, well, not the fourth, but like he leaves the palace walls again, and he sees this wandering holy man who has this like serene look, and he's happy and he's joyous, and he's old and he knows he's going to die, but he's loving life.
Yeah.
And Siddhartha's like, Siddhartha Gautama, the future Buddha, is like, talks to this guy. He's like, wow, like what's going on? Can you like teach me the ways? Why are you so happy? Like there's suffering all around me in the world, and we're all going to die. And in that moment, he decides to become and dedicate his life as a wandering holy man. Mm-hmm. And this is the birth of the Buddha, right? The story of the Buddha. So he leaves the palace gates, he leaves his father, and it's kind of this whole thing, because he's this amazing, intelligent, beautiful soul of a prince.
Yeah.
And, people are crying, and his mother, and he actually was married and had a child, and he says, no, this is my path, this is my calling, I'm going to go sort of discover what I can find. And he leaves the palace, and again, some people say 5 or 6 years, and he goes and he tries to, he experiments with all these like holy teachings, fasting, meditations, all this sort of stuff. And he actually almost dies from fasting and a couple other sort of crazy things. And he's just sitting under the tree one day, and he's sort of reflecting on his childhood. And as he's kind of reflecting, he's reflecting actually on insects, and he's reflecting on the lawnmower crushing the insects, going back and forth and stuff. And he feels immense compassion, and he's also kind of like, he just sort of chills out. And what he's actually doing is kind of meditating. Mm-hmm. And he keeps this practice up for a few more months, many more months, and the story differs, but he decides, all right, I'm going to go try and reach enlightenment and sit under the Bodhi tree. And it might have been for a few weeks or 1 month, and he just sits under the tree and just like reflects really deeply inside himself, and he reaches enlightenment. Yeah. Okay. And this is the whole idea, like talk about mindfulness and simplicity, like no distractions, no phones or whatever. Yeah. This is like the king of mindfulness, right? And what he realizes is that 2 things especially, that all life is impermanent, and everything in life is impermanent. Yeah. All right. And we can sort of get into that, and, our lives, everyone we know, your friendships, your career, the great civilizations that have come and gone, the great people in history will come and go, even someone like the president of America, in 10,000 years time, no one's going to care. No one's going to do whatever. And he comes to that realization that all life is impermanent. The second one is the idea of all life is suffering, okay? And it's suffering because we are attached, because of attachment and desire. He calls it like craving. And you might think like, this is like really pessimistic and holy shit, like, but it's not at all, because once you come to this realization, you can actually enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea of attachment, and he realizes as well, like this whole idea of attachment, we are attached to either the past or the future, or craving the future. And that is essentially, you're living in the past and you're living in regret, or you're just thinking back in the past, okay? Or, you know, frustration and so on and so forth. Or you're looking towards the future and you're living in anxiety, or you're jealous, or you're envious. And these are all negative emotions, right? Whereas again, the kingdom of heaven is right here in the present moment. So coming back to the point where like, oh, people would be like, holy shit, like what a pessimistic dude. Like, you know, to think that life is impermanent and here we are just suffering, life is suffering. But it's not, because once you realize that we are going to die, that having cravings and attachment is futile.
Yes.
All you really have is right here, right now.
Bro, it's a perfect point.
And just to finish off, once you realize this and you live this simple philosophy, you actually notice that every day is like a miracle, like without getting, you know, a little bit cheesy here.
No,
but,
man, it's true.
But man, like, I'm in this body right now. Like, how cool is this thing, this existence? You know what I mean? Like, we're making eye contact right now. Like, this is a miracle as far as like, if you really want to sit down and think about it. Like, I'm having thoughts that are coming out of my mind. And if you are, it's called, you know, the now. You know, if you really want to look into, there's Ram Dass,
Yes.
Be Here Now, and his podcast, or Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. That's like a really good introduction to this topic. And if you are here in the moment, you actually enjoy life times 1,000. You know, you notice little kids playing across the street. You notice the sun on your skin. You notice the birds flying in the sky. Just little things that we just are so distracted and just don't pay attention to. You know, the laughter of like a loved one, or, you know, my mom cooking me dinner, or like just little things. They're all like daily miracles.
Man, I think it's a crazy point, and what an amazing foundation for this conversation, because I think you've tapped into something that's really, really central to this whole conversation around simplicity. And I was actually sitting down with Jesse a couple of nights ago because I was feeling really stressed, and without going into all the details, nothing was wrong, but I was worried about a result that was going to be coming in the next couple of days, and it was stupid. It was in regards to the podcast, and I was just trying to get it all set up, and I felt as though I'd made a mistake that was going to cost a few $100. Anyway, I was sort of stressing out about it because we'd put so much work into getting it started, and what I realized was that in that moment, nothing had actually gone wrong. It was purely me, like you were saying, tapping into the future. So I was tapping into the future and freaking out about what the actual outcome was going to be, which turned out fine.
Of course, yeah, as they normally do. Hey,
and I think so much of the stuff that actually does cause anxiety, and you just said it then, they're purely thoughts. These thoughts come into my mind about what might happen, or what did happen, or what could happen, and then I just play with that and just toss it around in my mind over and over and over until I've just made myself a big ball of worry. Yeah. And I think I actually want to go into like one practical thing. We talked about it with the Buddha just then, but the whole idea of meditation, and how meditation can actually create like a little bit of separation between the thoughts that seem to drive our minds and the reality of the situation. Yeah. So I reckon on a practical term, and I wanted to talk about this because I know we've both had experience in it to some degree, by no means expert, by no means saying we've got it together, but got enough experience in it to be able to say this is what we've learned. Sure. I started it maybe 2 years ago, 18 months ago, because I think naturally, and I don't want to just label myself as this, but I think I find it very easy to become overwhelmed with anxiety and become overwhelmed with just delving into these things. Jesse calls it when I go into my rabbit hole of anxiety or whatever. It's horrible that I've got. This is why I preach this stuff, man, because I need to hear it more than anyone. I started meditating a couple of years ago, bro, because I really needed to learn how to be able to step back from my thoughts. My cousin Jamie, Buddhist in Western Australia, actually gave me some pointers and recommended the Headspace app or the Calm app, which sort of just walks you through the process of meditating. And for me, I started out just doing 10 minutes a day. And the idea was, what I learnt pretty quickly was that your thoughts, consider yourself sitting on the bank of a river, and there's a boat or a canoe or whatever just floating along. And a couple of minutes later, there's another boat. And we, the observer, sitting there watching these boats, but the boats are just our thoughts.
Yeah.
And so often we'll sit there and look at them and we'll see them go by and we feel as though we have to control them. So we'll sort of be reaching out and trying to direct them, and before you know it, there's another thought. And then you sort of, invested into that.
Crashing into each other. And...
But I think one of the things that meditation taught me was that I actually have the capacity to separate myself from my thoughts.
Yeah.
And be able to say, hey, I'm actually not
exactly
these
it.
thoughts. Because there were some thoughts that used to go through my mind, just crazy thoughts that I would have been scared to admit. And it used to scare me because I was like, crap, what's the matter with me? I was like, hang on a second. It's like when you're told not to think of a purple elephant, the first thing you think of is the purple elephant.
Yeah.
When I tried to suppress these thoughts, when I tried to ignore them, it was like they'd get bigger and bigger.
Definitely.
Over time, meditation sort of taught me to step back and just sit there and just observe these thoughts flowing through my mind and see that they don't actually dictate
100%.
any action that I make. And I think just that realization was so freeing. I started with the Headspace app, and still, I say this now, and I say it like I understand it so well, but I think from day to day, there'll be a stress that comes up in our day, and all of a sudden we'll attach all these emotions to this stress and feel like we have to solve it straight away, not realizing that we're not actually responding to the reality of the situation, we're responding to our anticipation or our imagination of what we think that situation will look like.
100%, man.
Have you had any experience in the meditation field?
I notice, and I to use a term, the idea of, I call it like the second arrow, which was also actually a Buddhist term. But like you said, like, so come back to the second arrow. But first of all, like, thoughts are not facts. You know what I mean? Like, can we like just... Why didn't someone tell me that like 20 years ago? You know
That
what I mean?
would have made my life so much easier.
Thoughts are not facts. And here we are stressing about whatever, and I'm not cool enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm going to fail this, I'm going to do this. Why that you know, my job interview, whatever, and you're freaking out in thoughts.
Yeah.
Whereas someone could just say, no, your thoughts are not facts. And like you said, through meditation, you can actually see these thoughts coming in and going. And this is the idea, it's called like cultivate the witness. So actually stepping back and witnessing yourself have a thought. And I'm not necessarily massively into meditation, but I've definitely become like a lot more chilled since I became aware of this. So as a teacher, a really simple one is if a kid's annoying me, which, you know, happens every day, maybe in the past, I would have like had a bit of a bite or like got angry or frustrated, like, why aren't you doing your work? What's going on? Like, get back to... Whereas now I can see myself almost getting like to cultivate the witness.
Yes.
See myself maybe getting frustrated. And of course, like, okay, I'm going to maybe like tell the kid to get back to work and stuff, but it's not going to ruin the next 20 minutes of my day.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to be like, holy shit, that was an average lesson, and, you know, and go home and throw my toys out of the car and like throw
really
my
good
bag
point.
and argue with my roommates. It's not, you know what I mean? So, to come back as well to this thing called the second arrow, which is, I think, such a great point of advice. Whereas when something happens to you externally, right? And like a really simple one is when you're cut off in traffic. All right, there's nothing you could have done about that, and someone's cut you off in traffic, or if someone, you know, pushes in front of you at the grocery store, if someone slightly insults you or something just annoys you, right? What I'm gonna do now? That is actually your choice. Am I gonna, you know, chuck a hissy fit and get on the horn and get frustrated and anger and like, you know, strangle the wheel and like throttle the wheel, or I'm just gonna be like, man, have the gap. You can go, you know, 0.3 seconds in front of me, whatever, you know. To keep going with that, you know, the people who do get on the horn and then they, you know, want to like try and overtake that person again and, you know, like cut them off, and then they get to work and they slam their door, and then, you know, the poor secretary's there and they're just like, oh yeah, whatever, and they get to their email and then they, you know, send off an aggressive email. It's 9 a.m. in the morning. Your day hasn't even started. Whereas on the other hand, bro, cut me off, whatever. Get to work, you know, hey Jess, how are you? What's up? How's your weekend? Nice one. You know, start off with a positive vibe, chill out.
That's so true. I think the amount of times, all the arguments that I have with Jessie are usually born out of the fact that either I've got a lot going on that I haven't responded to well, or Jessie's got a lot going on that she hasn't responded to well. And I think it's so obvious that when we do have that capacity to recognize that these thoughts are just thoughts and we can separate ourselves from them, not let them dictate our day, that it brings so much peace into every interaction.
Seriously.
And one of the conversations that I've had with so many people, and I imagine the listeners think, or some of the listeners right now would be thinking, yeah, but you don't understand, my mind is so busy. Like, I've just got thoughts racing through my mind all... Yeah, because you're human. and it happens to everyone. But the thing with meditation is that people just assume, and I used to make the same a year ago, and still sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that, oh man, my mind's too busy to be able to meditate effectively. But just like going to the gym doesn't just produce results overnight. You have to do it consistently before you start to build muscle, before you start to take shape. And meditation's one of those things. When you start, you're going to sit down, close your eyes, have nothing to do in this technology, advertising, just information overload society culture that we live in, and you're going to realize my mind is 100% racing. And you know what, when that happens, that's fine. It's normal.
That is actually a principle of Buddhism and this whole idea of meditation and mindfulness. It's a muscle, and the more you practice it, the stronger you get. No one's perfect at it. No one ever has, and it's not a first place or whatever. It's just just the more you practice, and not even meditation, just your everyday, the school of life. The world is a mental gym, and like I said, the next time someone or something happens to you, use it as spiritual practice, not even spiritual practice, but kind of like mental practice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, the train's late. Am I going to freak out? Or should I just, okay, this is a test. Calm down. Relax. And these happen, 50 times a day maybe, you know what I mean? Like, my mom's a stress head, like, bless her. But, like, I will almost, like, go out without a jumper or something, leave the house, or... real silly little stuff, for example, like she'll message me, like she's back home in Sydney, so like she'll message me if I've done my washing or whatever I had for dinner. And like, I can just imagine her sitting back at home stressing about if I've done my washing. It's like, Mom, don't worry about it.
That's
don't
so
let like
funny,
the second
man.
arrows hit you. Obviously she's kind of mom, I love her to bits, but it's just it's hilarious.
Man. I think just a really practical start point for anyone who's interested in learning is the Headspace app. Mentioned just before, or the Calm app. Get it on your iPhone. It's really practical, really clear, really non-creepy. In case you're not used to this field, it's very normal. That was one thing that I was a little bit worried about getting into.
Also to go with that practical thing, man. So like, for me, so I'm on the train an hour back and forth to school every day. So I've got like a lot of time, but that commute to work is like such a nice sort of time where you can actually practice this. So even if you're just driving in the car for 20 minutes, just turn off the radio and just like be alone with your thoughts. And I think like there is actually time in the day if people are thinking that they're too busy or if they can't make time or you got kids and stuff. Try and find like a little piece in the day, 15 minute, 20 minute. Like instead of just mindlessly listening to Today FM or whatever or Triple J, just be like, all right, you know what I mean? This is a valuable 20 minutes. I'm just going to use this right now. I had this realization as well, man. And again, I wish someone told me this 15 years ago. Wise Pally here, but like we train like our bodies no problem for 45 minutes or an hour every day, or our sport. But how much do we actually put into working into our like thought process in our mind and simplicity and calming the mind? If I had spent like 1/10 of the time that I have like trying to get fit and being in the gym and playing sport, it would mean such a big difference.
Yeah, bro. No, really good point. I know there's an infinite amount of stuff that we can potentially speak about on here, but we've got a couple of other ideas written down there. So I think the idea of mindfulness or meditation are really helpful. But what else do you got there that we might be able to apply to our situations?
I think, again, the whole idea of living in the past or the future. There's so many distractions in 2017 that push you into the past and the future. And I suppose social media is like a killer, and your laptop and your phone, because every time you're on Instagram, you're immediately pushed to the future, like, or you're looking at the past or some photo, or you're craving and you're attached and stuff like this. So that's a tough one, you know what I mean? Like,
the whole idea of technology.
Yeah, and I think you just need to be aware. It's not necessarily deleting or whatever and turning shit off. It's just if you actually understand the process and this principle, that people get so sucked into it and they don't realize that they're becoming attached, and they become a consumer instead of maybe trying to cultivate the witness. And there's nothing wrong with it, admiring a beautiful photo or post or something, but it's like, okay, what is actually this causing deep inside me? Am I getting anxious and like, oh my gosh, I want to be there or do that or do this, or I'm inferior in some way, or why doesn't my body look like that, or or Yeah.
I just think the whole inundation of information that is just in our pocket at every moment of the day right now is a really important point to talk at. And I totally agree that we just need to be aware of why it is that we keep pulling it out. Because I think one of the big things I notice, and I've said it 100 times, is so many moments that I might be in a quiet part of my day, or there might be nothing happening, and I could potentially just enjoy the free space in my day that I've got, and even maybe embrace that little bit of boredom that I feel. But instead of doing that, there's so many moments in my day where I won't touch that boredom. Instead, I'll just pull out my iPhone and jump on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And before I know it, my mind's racing with all these ideas and all these things I've just taken in. And then I complain about the fact I've just got no space for me anymore. And I think just an awareness of the way that we use our technology in our day-to-day life is really powerful, because hey, how many conversations do we have where people are just so busy, I just need some time for me, or just need a holiday? But and maybe that's true, but I think on a smaller scale, maybe before you take a holiday, you need to spare 15 minutes where you just keep your phone away and lay on your bed and just let your thoughts settle. I think there's so many moments. I personally, like, I know that when my mind's wide, I need to get out into nature. And for me, there's something about just walking through nature that allows the mud in my mind to just settle. I always come back from a walk with a fresh sense of clarity. And I know that if I'd spent an hour on my phone instead of just getting out and finding what it is that I could really, and instead of just getting out into nature and allowing the thoughts and emotions just to settle down, there's no way that the benefit from the phone would outweigh the benefit of nature.
Yeah, sure, man. That's such a really cool point. And I think what you hit there, the nail on the head, is nature and the natural world. And again, probably get a little more like philosophical here, but I believe there are like two kind of things in our world in 2017: the natural and the unnatural. And we tend to be so distracted with the unnatural. And like we said, you pull out your phone and Instagram or YouTube, all these things are unnatural. Things are trying to sell you shit, or you're trying to do whatever and all that sort of stuff. And like coming back to simplicity, focus on what's natural. Going outside. That's it. Just go outside. Everything else will be chill. You know what I mean? From there, catch up with a friend. This is natural. No one's trying to do anything or whatever. Get back to nature, and this is the whole kind of coming back to the present and the now.
One thing that really stands out to me is I think so many people who travel to a third world country come back and say, they just didn't have anything that we had, but they're so happy. And I find that really interesting, because it's a comment that comes from someone who's been born in a capitalist, consumer-driven society. Like we do really genuinely believe that our joy is going to be found in the latest model, the iPhone, the car, the house, the upgrade, the job title. And the fact is, we go to these places and we're like, they have none of that, and they're so happy. And I think it's really interesting, because it makes us realize that, hey, the reason they're so happy is because true joy is not found in the possessions that we have. It's not found in the stuff that we accumulate. I think that's one really important thing to touch on, is if you're feeling upset, or if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling as though there's just chaos in your life, one of the big things for me was to hold up a mirror and go, okay, well, where am I attempting to find joy? Am I really going to find it in the latest iPhone?
No, man.
Am I really going to find it in a bigger house or a nicer car? No, I'm not. In fact, I think so often the joy that we're looking for, it's already within us, and meditation is an amazing step towards this.
Things. They've been around for tens of thousands of years.
It's so true. And I think even if it's not right now for the people listening, I'm sure we've all had the experience where you go into nature and there's just a sense of peace and a sense of calm that you sort of almost connect with the things around you, and you're like, man, okay, well, I'm actually quite content.
Yeah.
And I think we can tap into that at any stage during our day. But it's like we just need to be mindful of the fact that we so often get swayed by the distractions around us.
Totally. Yeah, I think the key words there as well is it's extrinsic sort of motivations. Extrinsic is the car or the next purchase. It's external. What's intrinsic to you? What do you value? And these are things like joy and happiness and friends and things like that.
I was speaking to Courtney Carver. She writes a blog called Be More With Less. Just last night I was speaking to her, and we were speaking about the rise of minimalism in our world today. Like, why is it becoming so popular? And it's almost as though we're starting to wake up to this fact that our joy is not found in our things, and in fact creating a little bit of external space, or creating some space in our lives physically, can almost have this intrinsic effect. It can allow that space within us to open up. Do you ever come home to like a dirty house, and all of a sudden you've had a stressful day, you go inside, you're like, I hate that feeling.
Sure.
But you come into a clean room and there's something inside you that can sort of almost breathe. It's like you come in, you're like,
yeah, for sure. 100%.
And I want to use that as just a nice dirty segue into the third point in this whole conversation of minimizing. And I know it's something that you and I have spoken about off air quite a lot, and it's something that's made a big impact on me. But I want to rewind the clock to you flying back to Australia a couple of weeks ago, because you were saying you spent some time listening to the Minimalist podcast.
Yeah, man.
And you were pretty sold on the idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think even before I was listening to the Minimalist podcast, like, you know, the things that we've talked about today, they just make sense. You know what I mean? They just make sense. But coming back to the whole idea of being in an advanced country in Sydney or London or whatever, and we're just so driven by the next thing and the next purchase and the next promotion and the next paycheck. And before you know it, it just sort of cascades out of hand. You know what I mean? So for example, you know, you're with a partner or whatever, and you're saving to buy an apartment, okay, and then you get there, which is great, and that's cool. And then you move into your apartment, and all of a sudden you need things in your apartment. But before you need things, you need to be working. And then one day you want to upgrade your apartment. You maybe want to get a house, and then your house has a backyard, and your backyard needs a lawnmower, and you need a hose pipe, and you need a shed, and you need to paint the house. And before you know it, you're just chasing time and paycheck and paycheck and paycheck, and before you know it, there goes 10 years of your life or 20 years of your life, and you're a consumer. And this is a whole nother point I want to raise is, are you a consumer or a creator? And again, this needs to be taught in schools, or just be a critical thinker. How do you live your life? Are you chasing that next paycheck to buy shit or go out on the weekend or the next holiday and consuming? Or are you a creator? You know, are you creating something? Are you creating joy?
Yeah, no, I think I was thinking about this yesterday, bro. Like, why do we work 5 days a week? The reason we work 5 days a week is because of the fact that everyone works 5 days a week.
Society, you don't even think about it.
Yeah, so you start saying things like, you know, I'm going to just start taking a day off and maybe stop buying quite as much. And people look at you like, what are you doing? But I think there's something really amazing here. Like, if we can get some clarity in our lives about what it is we're actually trying to achieve. I think so often we go through the motions of our day-to-day life. By no fault of our own, we just assume it's the way you do it because it's what everyone does. But it's like we have no direction, no clarity on what we're trying to achieve. And when you've got no clarity on what you're trying to achieve, well, okay, why wouldn't you do what everyone else is doing? And this is one of the big things that's really just become clear to me, and it's the reason that I'm only working 4 days a week in a school at the moment, not 5. Yeah. I've deliberately, personally, started to be really careful with the things that I purchase. Now, I don't feel as though I'm going without anything that I really need. I'm just not buying as much as I used to buy just because I was chasing that temporary dopamine hit.
I was listening to your podcast the other day with that guy, and he said how he bought 300 things off Amazon.
Yeah.
So easy to fall into that trap.
It's so easy. And I think one of the crazy things is, and one of the best pieces of advice I've ever got, and hopefully can just relay that to anyone listening, is do you really need to be working as much as you're working, or do you just need to buy a little bit less shit?
Seriously, man.
Like, do you actually... and I don't want to say it as... I'm definitely not saying it out of a heart of disrespect. I'm saying it because, like, I genuinely want people's lives to be freed. And I know how much stress there is in the world. But I also know that without the need to buy so much shit, there's not that stress to have as much money.
Well, again, coming back to the whole beginning of this conversation, we buy shit because we're worried about the future. When if you just look at what you have right now, you don't need anything more in your life. You can be perfectly happy right here, right now, if you want it, and you can access it through clearing that mind and having that sort of stuff. I just want to raise like 2 points which just tie in with that really nicely. So, bro, what can't you buy in your life? Time. Right? Time. You can buy anything in the world. You can do whatever. You can be the richest man in the world and like the oldest, like the most stuff, but it's wasted time. You know what I mean? If you're back and you're 60 years old, you can't buy that youth again, or you can't buy that 20 years that you spent, you know, building your empire and a career that you didn't necessarily have so much love and passion for. And so the idea of you working 4 days a week, or just taking maybe some time off and spending it with loved ones, like I've got some colleagues who are school teachers, and so we get like 6 weeks summer holidays, and they thrive on that time with their young families. I don't have I'm not at that stage yet, but you can just imagine having like 6 weeks with your young family is so amazing, and it's time. You know what I mean? And the other point I wanted to make is this idea of like hedonic adaptation. So you familiar with that?
No.
It's the idea of when we make a purchase, our happiness or our pleasure might rise slightly for a period of time, and then it drops down pretty quickly, and we go back to sort of that discontent, and we're looking for the next purchase. And we've all been there, like for example, we buy a new pair of shoes and we're pretty happy for a week, you know what I mean? And then you get that first scuff mark, and then the next one, and you go out clubbing and you spill your drink on them, and it's like, oh shit, and then they just turn into, the normal pair of shoes, and you kind of chasing the next pair pretty soon after, you know what I mean? Or when you're a kid, and that Christmas gift comes around, and it's like, whatever, and you running around the backyard with your gift. What happens like 2 weeks later? You know what I mean? You leave it out in the rain, and you're over it. You know what I mean? And so this is hedonic adaptation, and the same principle applies as adults. You know what I mean? And not even just with goods. Like sure, like with possessions, and even like super wealthy dudes, and someone like Dan Bilzerian or someone out there who's got like a Ferrari. 6 months later, like the thrill is over of having that Ferrari. They want the next one, the newer version. Someone down the road has a fancier one. The pleasure is just as normal as driving a normal car, you know what I mean? And it's the same with like sexual partners and travel experiences. It's cool or whatever, maybe like instant gratification, but it's not like permanent meaning.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think as well, this ties in beautifully to what we're saying. And I mean, there's an endless amount of examples of people who have reached the top in our culture's eyes of celebrity, and then said back to us, man, like it's not what you think. Like I thought this is where joy and whatever was found, but I got here and realized it was just a few steps ahead, or it was a few steps back. And it's amazing to hear those people. And I think a lot of us don't take that seriously. We think, no, but if it was us, like then I would be content. If people just recognize me, then I'd be content. We get there and think, it's just not quite where it is. And I actually read a book called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay, yeah.
And it had an activity in this book where it just got you to write down 100 questions. You had to write it down as quick as you can, but without really stopping. And it didn't matter what's my favorite color or how much do I want to earn. But by the time you've got through 100 questions, in order to fill it up, you've pretty much covered a lot of areas.
Sure.
And then with that, you got to go through and sort of highlight the 10 most important questions that you came across. Yeah. And the whole idea there is to almost use this tool as a guide for your life. So for me, like some of the examples were things like, what do I want to do with my life? What kind of husband do I want to be? Like what kind of impact do I want to leave on the world? And now it's our goal to set about answering those questions in our life. And it's almost a mission statement just through questions. Yep. When we have that clarity on where it is we want to invest our time, our energy, our money, our hope, it makes our direction, it makes our confidence in where we're going so much more clear. Yeah. And I think when you're actually targeting areas in your life that not only bring joy to you, but bring purpose and allow you to put your passion into action, there is a sense of joy and contentment that comes with that. But not even just in those things. I think so often we put all our hope on our achievements and our accumulation and forget the fact that that contentment, which is already there, is accessible right now. Not when we have all these things.
Access the kingdom of heaven, man. Like seriously, here on earth.
Yeah.
There's a really beautiful quote which I heard from that the Jordan Peterson podcast, which I highly recommend people check out. But it's the kingdom of heaven is here on earth. Man simply chooses not to see it. Something along those lines. Yeah. The kingdom of heaven is here on earth. Yeah. Men simply choose not to see it. And I believe that's so true. You know what I mean? We're always chasing, like you said, and what we've said today. Chasing the future, chasing the next paycheck, chasing the next pay rise, the next 100 Instagram followers or whatever it is. We're just chasing or living in the past. Yeah. Come back to, just life is so cool, like right here, right now. Yeah. I mean, this is how good is it to be alive?
Yeah. Man, really good point. But before we wrap it up in a couple of minutes, just for someone like me, I always love sitting down and listening to a really good conversation. But I'm so black and white. I need some practical nuggets of just give me something to take away exactly so I can write down. And I thought, hey, it might be cool even if we could just chuck out a couple of dot points just to finish with. First of all, we've covered these in some depth already. Minimize. That's a big one for me. Start with a minimalist game, which I'll put in the show notes. What they do is the minimalists who are really well known in this scene have this game where each day for a month, the first day you throw out one thing, second day 2 things, all the way through the month. And by the end of the month, you got rid of about 500 things. Yeah. Just create that space in your life. So minimize is a big one for me. I think there's a real link between the external and the internal sort of space.
Yeah, sure, man. I love that one. But for me, it's real simple. And I only just discovered this one recently. So I was, like I said, commuting to work every day, and I'd always have like a podcast in, or listening to something, or reading something, and your mind's kind of racing, and like I said, you're kind of always thinking of the future. And I just only recently decided just to be alone with my thoughts and not have any external distractions. And just for an hour, just be by myself. And it's just really interesting, not necessarily looking at your phone, just kind of just observing the world around you, and just kind of, reflecting. I was reflecting on this conversation that we just had for the last 3 or 4 days. And I was actually like kind of getting stuck into like my thought processes and what did it actually feel on simplicity and mindfulness. And now I've had this conversation and I've kind of got it out of my head. And it was a really valuable exercise, I thought, just being by myself for an hour a day. And so, without sort of having crazy practical tips or whatever, just be alone with your thoughts.
Oh, great point. Man, I reckon we leave it there.
Man, really good.
Awesome,
This
brother.
is one of my favorite things to do during the week. Seriously.
Exactly. I hope
Besides the
those of
fact
you
I get
listening
to
enjoy it as much as we do.
Get to see your pretty face, mate, and whatever.
Oh my gosh. I'm growing my hair out at the moment. I'm going through an awkward phase where the sides are getting long, but before you know it, I'm going to look like Matt Corby.
You're not going out for 6 weeks. You just decided.
You're going to buy
Not
a
that
really
you
good
really need
beanie.
to anyway, but get back on the circuit, mate.
Bro, once again, thanks for stopping by. Cuddle, cuddle.
Bro, love it.
Back at you.
Till next time.
Peace. Hey, big love to everyone. I'll speak to you guys next week. So will Powley.
See you guys.
Seriously, catching up with Powley is one of my favourite things to do each week, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Guys, that was a fun conversation. Hey, haven't told you before, but if you're interested in getting an email from me, I'm real light on the email, but I just send through some of the recent material that I've been working on, blog posts, updates, podcasts, latest information that you're only going to get through the email. Jump on to tysonpopplestone.com/newsletter and enter your details in there. Then I'll shoot you through a welcome email and we'll get that started. Also, if you like the podcast, share it with a mate. Be so grateful if you could help us get the word out there. Apart from that, guys, that's about all we got time for today. So hopefully I'll see you again real soon.